and welcome in to the Blitz podcast. As always, or not as always anymore, but yeah, exactly. But I'm your host today, Mr. Kane Schwartz, and I'm joined by Mr. Tyler North, who ran a podcast episode with the boys on Friday. It was, but went well. How we doing, man?
Yeah, absolutely. It went well. Obviously, a little bit different roles on Friday for everybody, but yeah, did it with Jaden, and we finally got Mitch on an episode. He took some time away from his busy life as a PT student, and yeah, it was great to do it with the guys. Got to preview a jam-packed week in what we thought was going to be a get right week, and that was the theme of the podcast. And boy, did it not turn out that way. And I know we're going to hop into power rankings here later on, but man, it was once again another wild week with some wild upsets that everybody's just scratching their head thinking, what in the hell just happened in the NFL?
Yeah, exactly.
Every single week.
Yeah, go for it. What were we saying?
Oh no, I was just saying it happens all the time now in the league. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's been more parity in the NFL this year than there was last year. We thought there was a lot of parity last year, and the parity just continues as far as the games go. Fantasy, we were talking about it last week, how it's been all out of whack so far this year. I don't know. It felt like this week fantasy got a little bit more back on track. Like, it seems like we've got a lot of the big name guys have had most of their breakouts at this point. We can really I was looking at Austin Eckler, for example. Like, we know now that Austin Eckler is that first round pick, that top 3 pick that everybody decided to give investment to. Like, we're starting to figure out who the breakout guys are that are having consistent weeks. Starting to figure out, like, really we could put a stamp of confirmation on everything as far as fantasy goes, more so than we have been in these past few weeks. So I'm looking forward to diving into studs and dubs because of that.
Yeah, and I think the wide receiver position is one of those positions that has remained pretty constant with where most of our rankings were at the beginning of the year. I mean, looking at the top 10 wide receivers, even after the bye, Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams. Then you got some guys like Jalen Waddle, Marquise Brown, and Mike Williams to fill out the top 10. But, those top 5 to 6 guys were the top 5 to 6 guys I think we all consensusly had at the top, and they've lived up to the hype, which goes to show you, maybe getting a wide receiver in your first or early second, late first round, maybe that's a better way to go than like a running back 8, 9 instead.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's something that I did a lot this year. I talked about it a lot before the season, but guys that I was looking for, like Jamar Chase was a big one of mine towards the end of the first round that I was targeting. But, if you did the draft today, you're looking at guys like, obviously J. Jeff was in that conversation. Cooper Kupp's probably not, but Stephon Diggs is definitely right there. Devontae Adams is a first-round wide receiver.
Cooper Kupp's second in wide receiver in points. Yeah. Even after a bye this past week.
Yeah, it's just the Matt Stafford thing. We've been talking about it he only throws to that one guy though. So if he wants to, and he also just recently said that in an interview with Jalen Ramsey that competing against Calvin Johnson, he probably says that Cooper Kupp is the best receiver that he's ever played with. Just thought it was interesting,
But on the other end, at the running back position, before we hop into our studs and duds here, you've got Austin Eckler, okay, number 1. But then you got Saquon, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, McCaffrey's at 5, Fournette, Breece Hall, Ramondre Stevenson, Derrick Henry, and Aaron Jones. There's a lot more of the guys that you drafted in that 3rd and 4th round that are now in that top 10 as far as fantasy points. Obviously, very, very sorry to not only fantasy owners of Breece Hall, but also Jets fans everywhere out there. What a blow, unfortunately, to Breece Hall and AVT on the line as well. So terrible week. But yeah, back to that point, there's guys in there that, looking at guys like Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, who were probably drafted ahead of some of these guys that have not lived up to that type of hype. So it's a lot riskier, in my opinion, with the running backs than the wide receivers. You're getting a safer floor.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a trend that we probably will see going forward in drafts because, we were talking about it. You've always gone that running back in the first round. That's been my strategy. Running back, wide receiver, running back. Have been my draft strategy, like, plain and simple for, like, all of fantasy football until this year. So
Yeah, I mean, think about if you went the zero RB strategy and you got a guy like Kenneth Walker, Damian Pierce. I
Brees
mean, these
Hall,
guys late in draft, Brees Hall as well.
unfortunately now, but
Even like a Jamal Williams, who's been really good. Miles Sanders has been solid.
Travis
So you
Etienne.
have Travis Etienne now, Stevenson. Although Etienne was going in like 4th and 5th rounds, I'm talking about those late, like 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range. If you were able to scoop up a running back like a Kenneth Walker or something like that, then man, you're sitting pretty right now because I'd imagine your wide receivers are pretty damn good if you went wide receiver heavy.
Yeah, no, that's the truth. All right, man. Let's hop into our studs and duds from Week 7 of NFL action. So, we hop into the studs to start us off, and there was one really notable performance this week, and I believe that he also made an appearance on the list last week, and that was Joe Burrow, who scored 41 points this week. I think Joe Burrow's a lock-it-in top 6 quarterback going forward, man. I mean,
yeah, not only that, but the Bengals as a whole, you can start to believe in the Bengals again. Absolutely, as not only an AFC contender, but possibly to win this damn Super Bowl when it's all said and done. I would not be surprised if this team got back there. The way they're playing right now, the way this offense is clicking, I mean, you had Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd as the top 2 wide receivers in fantasy this past week, and I know we'll get into that in a little while, but I figured I'd throw that out there now. I mean, this offense absolutely exploded this week, and it started with the 65-yard bomb to Tyler Boyd in the first 2 minutes of the game. Real quick to note, the players to record in NFL history 450 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, an 80% completion rate, and a rushing touchdown in the same game are Joe Burrow, and that's it.
Oh.
That shows you how big of a performance this man had on Sunday. And yeah, absolutely, to start him off, you can't go wrong with Joe Burrow on Sunday.
I also believe that he's only quarterback in NFL history with multiple performances of over 500 yards passing, I believe, which is like straightforward, but that's crazy to believe. But
yeah, I think it was like since like 1980 or something like that. It's like he's the only one to do it twice, and then there's like I think Peyton or Big Ben might be in there. Brady might have been in there once, or Breeze, maybe Montana or something like that. But yeah, it's a very, very limited list that he put himself in. And not only that, but twice he's on that list.
Yeah. I mean, for the Bengals overall in fantasy, I mean, you mentioned Jamar, might as well hop into it right now. Jamar Chase scored 35 points. He's on our studs list this week. Tyler Boyd scored 32 points. He's on our studs list this week. I mean, overall, is there 3 rosterable wide receiver 1/2s on this Cincinnati Bengals team? Because Tyler Boyd is starting to put a decent stretch together of solid performances, man.
No, absolutely. And T. Higgins still had 5 catches for 93 yards. So don't let him, go completely unnoticed there. I mean, that's 14.3 points in a standard PPR league, which is probably about what his projection was. So yeah, I think you absolutely can roster all 3 of these guys. And it just, even, I mean, Hayden Hurst, I have him in one of my leagues. He got me 9 points. I mean, nothing to write home about, but nothing terrible. If they're going to throw the ball like this, though, Joe Mixon's going to take a hit. Somebody's got to take a hit in this offense. If you're throwing the ball that much, it's going to be Joe Mixon. If you're not, it's probably going to be Tyler Boyd that takes the hit. So what's going to be the strategy here week in and week out? That's what you're going to play with if you're a Joe Mixon or a Tyler Boyd owner. You almost have to guess what the Bengals game plan is going to be going into the week. The last 2 weeks, it's been, like Jaden said, they figured it out in the second half against the Saints. Let's just throw the damn ball and see what happens. Well, that carried over into this week, and how'd that work out?
Yeah.
So I think that's going to probably be the strategy moving forward, which, like I said, might take a hit to Joe Mixon.
Yeah, for sure. Now, all 3 are rosterable, that's no question. But do you think all have an argument? I mean, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is probably a wide receiver 2. Is Tyler Boyd a starting wide receiver 2 now on your fantasy team in a 10-team league? I would almost start to feel comfortable with that now.
Well, first of all, it depends on what your other options are.
Yeah.
Wide receiver 2, I'm probably still holding out. Let me ask you this. We'll play, would you rather, him or George Pickens?
George Pickens. And I would love to say
and that's
Tyler
the
Boyd,
conversation.
But...
And that's the conversation because I know some people are listing Pickens in that lower wide receiver 2 realm, but I have him as a 3. I still think he's a wide receiver 3. I know he's becoming a favorite target, especially in the red zone for Kenny Pickett, But Deontay Johnson's still there. Claypool's still there. He still likes Freiermuth. There's just as many weapons in Pittsburgh. Maybe not as good, but there's just as many weapons as there is in Cincinnati. I don't know who I would go there. I would still look at him as a wide receiver 3. I would not put Tyler Boyd in that wide receiver 2 conversation, mostly because I put Higgins in that 2 conversation. I don't put Higgins in that 1 conversation yet, and obviously Chase is 1. Russell, yeah, possibly wide receiver 3, maybe in a 12-team league. I would probably look at him more as a flex option. But yeah, if he's, one of your only options in a 12-man league, or if you're like between him or Rashad Bateman maybe, I would probably lean Tyler Boyd at this point in time. Who knows what's going to happen with Bateman. Brandon Cooks, I'd probably still take Brandon Cooks. Who knows? He might get traded.
See?
That might open up some more opportunities.
That's an interesting one. I don't know. Like, that's where it starts to get close. Like, I probably would take, on a week-by-week basis, though, I'd probably take Tyler Boyd over Brandon Cooks. But that's a matchup-based thing.
Adam Thielen is another guy that is in that same category, in that same
Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, I would throw him in that conversation as well. Even like a Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton at this point, I don't even know. He might be in that conversation too. Depending on what happens with DK, I'd still put Tyler Lockett ahead of him, but it's close. So yeah, I like Tyler Boyd moving forward. I don't like him as much as a wide receiver too, though.
Yeah. Final thing I'll say on Tyler Boyd, when you're making a lineup decision based on whether or not you're going to put Tyler Boyd at that wide receiver 2 spot on your fantasy team, like, the argument for Tyler Boyd being in that wide receiver 2 spot is that he was a really good football player, like, just 2 years ago. I mean, he was one of the top performing wide receivers in fantasy, the best slot receiver that year in the National Football League. Like, he's done it before. We've seen it, and now it's starting to pop out again, and it's not like he's an old man hobbling around. So, yeah, yep. I like it. I like it from Tyler Boyd. But let's move on.
That's what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
That was the only last thing I was going to say. Is he's like 28 years old. So he's kind of the forgotten man in this, because he was there at the start of this rebuild in Cincinnati, and he's kind of just floated under the radar, and a lot of people have forgotten about him. But you'll have these weeks like you had this past week that makes you, it reminds you of who Tyler Boyd is and what he can actually do. And he's not a bad wide receiver. And yeah, very viable fantasy option.
Absolutely. All right, let's roll on through the rest of the studs. And the next guy on our list is a guy that we were talking a little bit about in chat on Sunday, and that is Josh Jacobs, who rolls and thunders for 37 points on Sunday, man. I think Josh Jacobs, when it's all said and done, I mean, you got Eckler, Saquon possibly finishes above. I mean, he's top 3 fantasy running back.
Well, who was our start of the week this week on our TikTok, and who was the guy that I highlighted as definitely a top 12, maybe top 10 running back moving forward this season?
Was it Josh Jacobs?
And he was a stud this week too. Absolutely blew up. Second career start.
Kenneth Walker, yeah.
Kenneth Walker. I personally like Kenneth Walker more than I like Josh Jacobs. I think that the return of Darren Waller could hurt Josh Jacobs, because Foster Moreau is a run blocking tight end. Yes, he has a couple catches here and there, but he's predominantly in there for run blocking. Now, when you take that run blocking tight end and put him at a tight end 2, and you bring in a more pass happy or a more catching, receiving style tight end, Darren Waller, you're going to take some targets away from Josh Jacobs. I still think he's a touchdown machine. So I think you can depend on that. Top 3 running back the rest of the year. I don't know if I see it. Seattle is completely run dominant. I know DK is still there. I know that Tyler Lockett's still there. Marquise Goodwin came on the scene. I'm sure we might touch on him. But I still think Pete Carroll is a run-heavy style coach, and he's not going to break away from his bread and butter, which is why I like that a little bit more, because I look at the Raiders as a pass-happy team. I know Jacobs has been doing well, and some of it is game script, but you've got Devontae Adams, you've got Hunter Renfrow, you've got Darren Waller. I just look at this team as a little bit more pass-happy. I still look at him as a top 10 running back. I don't know if I look at him as a top 3.
Okay, that's fair enough. I could probably get with that. I will say that, I mean, you want to think that the Raiders are a pass-happy team, but they've been they weren't winning football games earlier this year, and now they're starting to win football games with running the ball with Josh Jacobs. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of mentality could keep Josh Jacobs in that top 5 category. But you mentioned it. Kenny Walker, man, he also ends up on our studs list with 29 points this week. I mean, we were mentioning it earlier. He's probably, when You think about guys getting opportunities this week, Ramondre, Kenneth Walker. Like, I like Kenny Walker 2 times more than Ramondre Stevenson.
Oh, I like Kenny Walker more than I probably like Nick Chubb. If somebody's offering me Nick Chubb for Kenny Walker right now, I'm not gonna. If I'm getting Kenny Walker, I would take it. I'm telling you, I think this guy is gonna blow. This guy ran 20 on that run. He ran 22 miles per hour, which is the fastest by any player this year handling the ball, whether that's running back or receiver. Let that sink in. 22 miles per hour. And this isn't a guy that just randomly jumped on the scene. This was a highly touted college running back that has just carried that over into the NFL. I know he was out the first 2 games. I think it was hernia surgery. Nothing that's, lingering or going to affect him week by week. I'm telling you, this guy is the real fucking deal. And if you don't have him, I would go out and get him. If for some reason he's not owned in your league, which I don't even know why that would be possible. I don't know what league you're playing in. But if he's not, absolutely go get him. But I would be trying to trade for this guy now. I know it's a buy high opportunity and you normally want to buy low. I don't give a fuck. I'm going after this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you there. Like, I mean, we saw what a really effective running back in Seattle can do in the former Marshawn Lynch beast mode, and Kenneth Walker's catching passes. Like, so imagine what Kenny Walker can do. Like, for the.
But you look at the history. You look at the history too, besides Lynch, Chris Carson, even Christine Michael did really well. Rashad Penny was doing well before he got hurt, and last year as well. Running backs thrive in Seattle.
Yeah, Chris Carson. I mean, he was. As far as highly touted guys coming out of college, Marshawn Lynch is in that category. Kenny Walker's in that category. Chris Carson was I believe, a 4th or 5th round
under
pick.
the radar at OK State. Yeah, he was a little.
Rashad Penny,
he wasn't as
first round pick.
And that's the question. What do you do if you're Seattle? What do you do with Rashad Penny now?
No clue.
I mean, he's hurt, so obviously he's not valuable in trade as far as trade value this year. Maybe in the offseason you try and deal him, but you might just run the 2-headed monster with those 2.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. He was drafted a while ago. So, well, they signed him. Did they sign him to a 1-year deal? He was a free agent this offseason.
I think they did. I know it was a smaller deal.
Yeah. So, I mean, Kenny Walker is the running back in Seattle going forward, the RB1 for sure. So, we mentioned Austin Eckler also ends up on this studs list with another 36 points. This Chargers offense continues to look worse, which only means good things for Austin Eckler going forward, man. Like Justin Herbert, he's hurt. He's hurt.
But 31 yards rushing does concern me, but 96 yards receiving. I mean, that's just incredible when you think about it, that no matter what type of game plan a team might have, we're going to shut down the run today. Okay, Austin Eckler will still get his catches. We're going to shut down the pass today. Okay, I'll just get my running. And that's where I think he's matchup proof. And that's where I think he's RB1 right now. Because no matter what teams are game planning against him, no matter what the game flow is, no matter what it is, the Chargers want to get the ball to their best playmaker. And with Mike Williams possibly being out now, Keenan Allen handling a hamstring injury that, he didn't look all that great in his first game back to action in about 4 weeks. Like I said, Mike Williams who are you going to give the ball to? I mean, Gerald Everett, Josh Palmer, DeAndre Carter. It's Austin Eckler. That's pretty much it. And Herbert's going to be fine dumping it off. I mean, 12 catches? That's absolutely ridiculous for a running back.
Yeah, and I think I saw a stat that Herbert only went 5 plays over 15 yards downfield. Like, I mean, I was talking about it earlier. I really do think those ribs are going to fuck with him the rest of the season. I think that's what it is, because you're trying to find an explanation as to why one of the best quarterbacks in football last year is just playing terribly this year. And it's...
And oh, how the tables. Do we bring up the conversation with Herbert and Burrow again? Because we've been a little silent on that the last couple of weeks because Mr. Joe Burrow has been doing his thing, but I think it might be something that we talk about later on in some power rankings.
For sure. It'll be interesting to talk about. All right, let's move on to another stud on the stud list, and that is Aaron Jones, who goes for 29 points. Helped him out to get a garbage time touchdown in the end zone, but it was a hell of a catch. He mossed him, something that no Packers wide receiver can do right now, and only Aaron Jones has talent to do. But he had pretty shitty weeks the 2 weeks prior to this, so I don't know how to feel about Aaron Jones. Like, I mean, coming into the year, I loved him to death. And it seems like the Packers are going to continue to be in losing football games. So as far as like that goes, that makes me feel good because AJ Dillon's not going to get as much run because they won't be ahead in ball games and they won't just be trying to run the clock with an AJ Dillon type. They'll be trying to get yards with a guy like Aaron Jones. So that way I feel good, but this Packers offense just looks shit. So
23 yards rushing for Aaron Jones. Just let that sink in. And AJ Dillon, 15 yards rushing. That's it. No catches, 4 rushes, 15 yards. I mean, that guy's completely disappeared, which is why if you have Aaron Jones, you gotta be like, damn, this offense is shit. But at least the backup isn't getting all the touches, you know? Aaron Jones is still being factored into the passing game. I mean, I think he had 9 catches in this game, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns, which obviously really bailed him out for a good fantasy day. But yeah, the competition has not been playing well. I would probably still roster AJ Dillon if for only a handcuff purpose. But man, I would not be starting AJ Dillon right now. But yeah, Aaron Jones, he had those dud weeks previously. I don't think this is sustainable if he can't get the running game going. You can't depend on 2 receiving touchdowns every single week from your running back.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that was one thing I mentioned on our little IG live sesh before the game. If we could stop the Packers' run game, then we can win. And that's what ended up happening. If you could stop this Packers run game, then you can basically stop every weapon if you want to call it a weapon, on the Packers offense. So Aaron Jones, I mean, you can't depend on that, really. It's like, I want to feel good about it, but it's tough. It's tough right now. Aaron Jones, I feel like, is miles ahead of AJ Dillon. People that thought that AJ Dillon was going to take over this year are sadly mistaken at this point. But that's about all you could take from that. So, all right, let's move on through the rest of the studs. Mecole Hardman, 28 points this week, heavily involved in the Chiefs' offense. He's got to be a hot waiver wire commodity this week.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too excited about Mecole. I know it's happened back-to-back weeks where he's had touchdowns. I just, Juju still looks like he's the guy. And I don't think that that's at all questionable, really and truly. Mecole had 4 catches for 34 yards and a touchdown, and then had a rushing touchdown as well, which is what he adds. A little bit more of the rushing, obviously more so than Juju, but sustainable, I don't know. I'm still looking at him as like a flex option. Like, you're going to have the weeks like you had this week, but then you're also going to have the weeks where he puts up, absolute duds as far as, the last 3 weeks he's had really good weeks, 28, 13, and 12. But you look at the games before that, 1 point, 1 point, 7 point, 10 point. You're going to get those boom weeks. You're going to get those bust weeks. He is the definition of a boom or bust receiver. If you're depending on him on a bye week, I agree with it. As a wide receiver 3, maybe flex option. But other than that, you're not putting this guy in your lineup you've got better options, I would hope, than starting him as like your wide receiver 2 or your wide receiver 3. Waiver wire ad, probably. I think he's worthy of a roster spot, but I don't know about putting him into my starting lineup on a week in, week out basis.
It used to be boomer bust, like totally 100% boomer bust with Mecole, but what gives me optimism is that they didn't really make it a point to get him involved in the running game before, and now, I mean, with that speed that was so heralded coming out of college and how he's going to be just like a Tyreek Hill, yada yada, like, you didn't really see them trying to get all that talent involved. But they had 2 designed runs in which he scored 2 touchdowns off of. Obviously, that's not sustainable, but the message that sends is that they're trying to get Mecole more involved in this offense. And he seems like drops were a huge problem earlier in his career. He seems like he's got one of the more steady sets of hands on the team outside of Juju. So, from what we've seen so far. So, I like Mecole a lot as a waiver wire ad this week. I don't know. I heard something from the Chiefs today that they recalling a quote from Patrick Mahomes before the season about how this Chiefs offense will be so frustrating. Sorry, fantasy managers, because it's going to be somebody different every week. And it kind of gives that vibes with Mecole. But I feel a lot better about him now than I did before.
See, I feel better about Juju. I think that if you spent some draft capital on Juju in like the 5th, maybe 6th round, I think that he's I think what his floor is going to be, 7 points, maybe 8 points. but I think he's turned into Mahomes' number one target. And this is what we talked about at the beginning of the year. It was going to take time with him and Valdez-Scantling. He hasn't really gotten it going yet. I mean, he had some big catches this week, but we knew that it was going to take time for them to build up chemistry with Mahomes because this was a completely different offense. But it does show you when teams try and shut down Kelsey. I mean, I know he had 15 points or so, which is still ridiculous, but not a Kelsey-like week. And when teams try and shut him down, it still gives the other guys opportunities, and they're thriving on those opportunities. So, yeah, it once again comes down to game plan. Are teams going to shut down Kelsey, or are they going to try and shut down the receivers? Which is, where Miko plays into that factor. Like I said, I like Juju as the number one receiver in that offense moving forward. But I think Miko is a viable number two option, which, like I said, puts him on that 3, maybe flex radar on a bye week. But like, for instance, I would take Tyler Boyd over Miko for sure.
Me too. That's the conversation you're having. But Juju easily over a guy like Tyler Boyd. Like, that's not. I'm not making the argument that Juju is not as good as or as viable an option as Miko. I think Miko's a hotter waiver wire ad than you're leading on. Like, I like him better than you do, but we're on the same page with Juju. Like, that guy is the most trusted target of Patrick Mahomes right now. And I said this before the season with Aaron Rodgers. Like, now I'm saying it with Patrick Mahomes, if you're closing your eyes and taking a dart throw on the guy who's going to be the number one receiving option outside of Travis Kelce for Patrick Mahomes, you're doing that. And a lot of people took that shot with Juju, and it's finally starting to shape out. He's had 2 20-plus weeks the past 2 weeks, and I think he's probably lock it in wide receiver 2 in your lineup for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and a guy that has just completely disappeared is Sky Moore. That was a guy that we thought might jump onto the scene as a rookie receiver, but muffed a punt this past week. His target share has completely dropped and completely gone away. He's absolutely the wide receiver 4 in this offense, and it doesn't look too good. I wouldn't have him. I mean, dynasty formats you might, but he's completely off the radar.
Yeah, I would feel better about MVS going forward in the season than I would Sky Moore for sure. So
yeah.
All right, to round out the studs list, we have George Kittle coming in as the only tight end on the list at 22 points. Is George Kittle back? Are we putting him back into that lock-it-in tight end, top 3 tight end in the league?
Yeah, and I know when we get to our duds, we'll probably get into one of the other tight ends this week. But for the most part, you can pretty much depend on Kelsey, Andrews, and George Kittle, I think, as your tight end 3, just because there's too much parity with the rest of the guys. Like David Njoku looked good, but I know he's out now, I think, this week, out 2 to 5 weeks now with a sprained ankle. So he obviously drops off the radar a little bit. But then you're getting into guys like Jawan Johnson randomly. Pat Freiermuth might be in that top 5 tight end conversation when it's all said and done. Dalton Schultz had a nice little bounce back game, so maybe fantasy owners are looking for him to step up. You still got a guy like Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert. So there's options out there, but I would cement George Kittle in as that tight end 3. Hawkinson there too, but he's had some boom and bust weeks. So yeah, I'd go with Kittle there at 3.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Jimmy G's trying to figure it out right now, trying to figure out how to be that Jimmy G of the past. And, I mean, a solid way to figure that out is to throw to a guy who you've had a lot of success with, and that is George Kittle, the safety blanket for a guy like Jimmy G. So, going forward, yeah, I think George Kittle is back into that elite tight end category. Do you think he surpasses Andrews or Kelsey at any point this year, or are those guys just in a god tier?
Yeah, I would say that no, George Kittle will not pass either of those guys. You have Brandon Ayuk, you have Deebo Samuel, and you've got Christian McCaffrey. Too many targets to go around. Andrews, who else is he going to throw to? I mean, Bateman, Duvernay, okay. And then Kelsey's obviously Mahomes' number 1 target, and there's no shying away from that. So I think he's 3rd, but in my opinion, he's a pretty distant 3rd. I would still take those 2 any week over Kittle.
Fair enough. All right, that does this for our studs segment of the week. So let's dive into the studs portion. And to start it out, we have Jared Goff coming in at 2 points. I don't think he's rosterable anymore. He was kind of a hot ad in 2 quarterback leagues for a little bit, but I don't like it anymore. I don't think you can roster Jared Goff.
No, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown got hurt in this game. Obviously, Swift was out as well, which he normally is a decent pass catching running back. I know Jamal Williams is there. Jamal Williams actually fumbled for the first time in his NFL career this past week, which is pretty ridiculous because he's been around for like at least 6 or 7 years. But yeah, I would not. I would be looking for much better option than Jared Goff. I mean, if you want to go to the waiver wire and look for some guys, if Geno Smith is still available, I'd be looking at Geno Smith as a starting quarterback. Weirdly, it's so weird that I can sit here and say this, especially since we're going into week 8. But Daniel Jones might be a quarterback that you're going to stream as an option on a bye week because of what he's got to offer. So I definitely think there's other options out there more so than Jared Goff. Justin Fields. Justin Fields had a great week on Monday night against the Patriots. He looked great. His running ability, whoo, sky's the limit for that guy. And I don't like the Bears, but I do like Justin Fields, and I am rooting for him maybe on a different team. But yeah, there's much better streaming options.
Yeah. That's another stud that I didn't mention. Justin Fields, for sure. He was the stud of the week. I mean, compared to what he's been doing, I mean, he seems like he's actually here. Maybe actually arrived. So, the other guys on the duds list at the quarterback position, Lamar puts up only 11 points this week. That's back-to-back appearances on the duds list for Lamar after having a really hot start to the season. I mean, I don't like it because we have seen this before where Lamar just gets into these ruts, but he's fucking Lamar Jackson. I wouldn't panic if I were Lamar Jackson.
No, I mean, like, you're going to start him. Do you want to maybe try and trade? That's a possibility. Here's his week by week overall this season. 21, 42, 40. Obviously, like you said, brilliant start. Last 4 weeks, 15, 15, 17, 10. That's not what you're looking at from a top 4, top 5 quarterback. You want to at least have 20 points in one of those weeks. I agree. I don't think you're pressing the panic button. I think the contract's getting to him, man. I really do. I think it's a huge psychological impact on him right now that now when he's struggling and maybe not performing, and when they're up in these games and you blow that lead once and then you do it again and then you do it again, it's like that contract's weighing on you because people are talking. The media is absolutely any little thing that you do, they're going to scrutinize. And you fumble like you did against the Giants, or this past week they almost gave it up. I know it was Justice Hill's fault, but I just worry about the psychological impact that it's having on him right now because he's dealing with all these conversations. This is something that we have never seen before. I don't have ever seen in professional sports, especially with an athlete at the level that he's at. So yeah, I worry about that. But as far as fantasy is concerned, I mean, what other option are you going to get besides him? I don't know maybe if you could trade him for like a Joe Burrow, possibly, but I think I'd still probably take Lamar over Burrow. But that's the conversation as far as guys in that same grouping that you might want to trade for. But I would probably still take Burrow. I mean, I would still take Lamar.
Yeah, when I say hit the panic button, are you hitting the panic? Like, are you trading him away? Personally, I'm not. Like, I'm giving it another week or so because I still think Lamar Jackson could win MVP when it's said and done. Like it
this year, no. I don't. I think with what Josh Allen's doing, what Patrick Mahomes is doing, what Jalen Hurts is doing.
Jalen Hurts has outshined Lamar Jackson.
Even what Geno Smith is doing. I mean, I think that all these guys are just putting up much better seasons, and it's going to take them to have like 3 or 4 weeks that Lamar's had for them to completely, for him to supplant them in the MVP race. I just don't see it. I can see 1 or 2 bad weeks from these guys, but not like 4 consecutive weeks.
Fair enough. Guy that we've consistently seen on the dud list and will not even get close to a shot at MVP again is Tom Brady. 12 points this week. I'm dropping him. That's it.
Yeah.
He's droppable. This is the thing, and I don't think there's a debate unless it's 2 quarterback league. If it's a 10-team league, I'm dropping him. He's a name. Guys, it's just like it's a name, but fantasy football is about points, not names. You got to drop Tom Brady.
Yeah, the other thing is like he's gone against some weak pass defenses in the past couple weeks. Kansas City, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, and Carolina, and he's put up 25, 19, 13, 11. So he's consistently gone down week in and week out. That's not even his lowest point of the season because in week 2 he had 9 points against the Saints. So yeah, I would look at him in that wide receiver quarterback, like 11 to 14 or something, probably.
I don't think he gets higher than 15 on a weekly basis. I mean, look at what he's done so far this year, man. Like, he's getting his guys back.
All right, let's do a little friendly wager here. Tom Brady will be a top 15 quarterback this week.
This week? That's such a fucking sneaky bet. No, rest of the season.
You said week in, week out he's not a top 15.
Okay. Matchup based.
I'll go
Matchup based.
I'll go top 12.
Okay, deal.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. On Engage 8, sometime next week, if he is not a quarterback 12 or better, I will do 20 push-ups on Engage 8. And if not, you will do 20 push-ups on Engage 8.
Fair enough. I mean, 12,
all right,
12 is close.
Go ahead. You realize what you just did. You just bet against Tom Brady.
I mean, is this Tom Brady?
That. Let that
is
sink
this Tom Brady or a man posting as Tom Brady in a meat skeleton? Like, this is not Tom Brady. Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not nervous at all to bet against this fucking goober. Like, this guy stinks.
Okay.
He just put up 3 points against the Panthers. Woo! No thanks. I don't want you anywhere near my fantasy team. You're a QB2 in 2 quarterback leagues in a 10-team league. In an 8-team league, you're also 2, but rosterable in a 2-quarterback league. But only if you're in a 2-quarterback league or a 12-team league am I rostering Tom Brady. All right, another guy with a dud of a week. Dak Prescott, 12 points in his return to the gridiron. I don't know. What do you think, man?
I mean, I kind of called this going in, is that it's going to take a little bit of time. Him and another quarterback who didn't have that great of a game, and that's Tua. I know he had like 15 points, but both of them. I mean, Tua came out firing, but then you saw it slowing down. The chemistry takes time to rebuild. You know, when you're missing that much time, I don't care if you're still throwing the ball in the practice field or still, vibing with the team, going all that stuff. If you're not in game action, it's hard to build up this chemistry. And it's going to take maybe 1 or 2 more weeks before, a CeeDee Lamb owner or a Michael Gallup owner who put up, I know we might get into him, an absolute goose egg this week. If you're one of those owners, be patient. It's going to come. If you have CeeDee Lamb, I would actually probably buy low on CeeDee Lamb right now. I think this is the lowest point that you're going to get him at in the entire season. So I don't take too much from this performance. First game back, he didn't really have to do much because the defense was so good in this game. That game was for the taking, though. Like I said, Jamal Williams fumbled on the half-yard line. Dallas recovered that. They scored. Detroit's up 13-10 midway through the third quarter. So that game completely changed after that play. But I wouldn't take too much into this. I still think he's probably going to be a top 12 quarterback on a week-in, week-out basis.
Yeah, for example, I'm a publicized hater of Dak Prescott so far this year, and I'm taking Dak Prescott over Tom Brady rest of the season. It's not even close. I'm wiping my hands and saying,
yeah, I knew you were going to bring this question up.
Ain't no problem.
I knew this is what this was going to get to. As soon as I said Dak Prescott's a top 12 quarterback week in, week out, I was like, I know he's going to bounce back with the Tom Brady shit we just talked about.
Why can't you argue as adamantly for a guy like Dak Prescott than you can Tom Brady, who I know Tom Brady's Tom Brady, but
no, which one am I going to take rest of the season? That's the big question. I'm probably going to take Dak, but I don't think it's as far as a margin as you probably have it.
Okay, I'm trying to think. All right, name game with Tom Brady real quick. Okay,
you're going to throw me Geno Smith? I'm still going to take Tom Brady.
I'm taking Geno Smith. It's not close. Russell Wilson, Tom Brady. I'm taking Russ.
Brady.
Taking Russ.
Brady.
Just because the running ability that's possible in Russ, and yeah.
Kyler. I'd probably take Kyler. Tua. Probably take Tua. Rodgers.
I'd probably take Brady. I'd probably take Brady, but it's the same air for those two. They just absolutely stink. So.
Daniel Jones.
I'm Brady. Okay. Derek Carr. So quick to say that.
Yeah, it's close. Trevor Lawrence.
I'm pretty quick to say that too.
I'm taking Brady.
Dude. That's like 10 quarterbacks that I probably put ahead of Tom Brady. So my bet is pretty close.
Okay.
But
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna see.
yeah.
We're gonna see.
As far as Dak Prescott goes this week, he put up the 12, kind of a stinker, but you can't take much. In fantasy, you can't take much from this. The Cowboys, you can be slightly concerned because they were struggling to beat the Lions in Dak Prescott's return. But yeah, and with CD, like CD's not really quarterback dependent in my opinion. Like he's better with Dak, but I mean, no matter the level of quarterback play, like no matter if Dak's playing good or bad, I feel like CD's going to be good. So as we move on through the duds, we hop into the running backs, and we've already talked a lot about it, not really used to beat the dead horse. 2 points for A.J. Dillon. Yeah, I mean, he's droppable or a backup handcuff.
8-man league, he's droppable. 10-man league, it's a debate. 12-man, I'd still keep him.
I mean, he had that big week 1, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm probably dropping him in an 8 and 10 team league. Hold on to him in a 12 team league.
I'm looking elsewhere. We'll put it like that.
Like, because if you're looking at somebody like super attractive on the waiver wire this week, like and looking at AJ Dillon, he's probably the most sore thumb on your team. You're probably feeling good about that. But as we move on, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably look at a Deontay Foreman or Chuba Hubbard over AJ Dillon. It's close, but I would probably take the upside that you might get out of those guys, especially if one were to be injured. I know Chuba's nursing a little bit of a tweaked ankle, but he should be ready to go this week. But even a guy like a Jerick McKinnon, I'd probably take Jerick McKinnon right now, even over him. Yeah, Pacheco's another one I'd probably take over him. So yeah, there's viable options on the waiver wire that you can pick up to at least roster ahead of AJ Dillon.
I mean, Pacheco was listed as the starter this week and was getting a decent amount of carries.
Nobody really stepped up. I know Edwards-Helaire had the touchdown, but like nobody really stepped up for that Chiefs backfield.
Yeah. That's fair. All right, as we roll through, Leonard Fournette scores 5 points, but not really anything to read into there. Just a matter of game script and only putting up 7 points in the game. Or 3 points. My bad.
3 points. But this is the concern. Tampa Bay, and I might get into this a little bit later when we're previewing the Thursday night game between them and the Ravens. Tampa is last in the league in rushing, and he had 8 carries, Leonard Fournette that is, for 19 yards. I mean, this is a major concern because if you can't run the ball, teams are just going to load up on the pass. And, Brady's throwing the ball at a historic rate right now. I mean, 45 throws pretty much every single game, it seems like, for him. And Fournette's going to get those receiving abilities, but I do worry how this lack of rushing ability is going to not only factor into the Bucs season, but also as a Fournette owner, if you have him as your RB2, I would be looking elsewhere. I would be, I would consider like even
as an RB2. You're looking elsewhere. Some people have Fournette as their RB1. A lot of people have their people as Fournette as the RB1.
It's so what you're getting on the ground week in, week out is just, in my opinion, so scary. Like the last 3 weeks, he's had 19, 63, 56, -3, 35, and 65. He had 127 week 1, but outside of that, he hasn't even sniffed 100.
But what does his fantasy production look?
Yeah, he's getting some of the receiving work, and that's in once again, it goes back to that like Aaron Jones conversation. Are you going to sit there and just depend on his receiving ability to get you points week in and week out?
Yes, more so than an Aaron Jones, probably, because I mean, Leonard Fournette's the guy in Tampa Bay. Like, I mean, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, as much as we've been shitting on A.J. Dillon, it's probably going to be mostly a 50-50 split going forward. Like, that's not the case here.
Would you trade Travis Etienne for Leonard Fournette?
No, because...
I mean, Travis Etienne's an RB2 right now.
Come on, man. They don't have James Robinson anymore. They're an RB1.
Oh, I know they don't.
Travis Etienne is an RB1, guys. RB1. He's easily an RB1.
What about an Alvin Kamara?
Come on, man. No. Okay. These are the like.
How many RB1s?
Okay, those are lower tier RB1s. Okay, there's 10 RB1s right now. Lenny's 1. Najee's not 1 anymore. Kamara's up there. Dalvin's up there. So Dalvin, Kamara, Saquon, Austin Eckler, CMC, and then that's where it starts to
Josh
Josh
Jacobs, Nick Chubb,
okay,
Joe
Joe
Mixon.
That belongs there.
There's definitely one more that we're missing. Kenneth Walker. I would put Kenneth Walker in that category.
Okay, but that's a question mark. Like,
is
it? Yes, because
I do not look at that as a question mark in my mind,
at
all.
Okay. I mean,
I think that's a home run slam dunk RB1.
The Bucks just need to fucking win games.
Derrick Henry.
Okay.
Derrick Henry. Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, okay. That's the top 10.
That's 11 right there.
Okay. 4. Okay. All right.
I cannot throw Leonard Fournette into an RB1 conversation. Absolutely.
Before season, he was definitely RB1 category for sure, but I definitely am with that argument. But he's a top tier RB2 still. With the way he's been playing like shit. And I mean, in the running game he's been playing like shit. And he's still a top tier RB2. Top tier.
You want to hear how I view it? In my mind, I look at it as an Ezekiel Elliott comparison.
The Cowboys have a Tony Pollard, man.
I'm not saying they don't. And look, Rashad White had more points than Leonard Fournette this week.
But on the ground game, that Leonard Fournette is the ground king. He's not.
Correct, but they can't run it on the ground.
But if they're losing, how long are the Bucks gonna lose? I mean, if the Bucks really, 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 really stink, if we really, all right, that's what we're basically saying here. Do the Bucks, are they legitimately just terrible? Because will they just be marching back from early deficits, the rest of the year? Because if that's the case, Leonard Fournette might not be an RB2. But, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Tom Brady will be a top 12 quarterback.
He'll be like Matt Ryan, throwing, 60 passes per game, not being too effective with it. But...
All right. I think we've agreed to disagree.
That's fair
on
enough.
The Leonard
It was good to talk about it, though. All right, got another guy with a dud this week as we move on to the wide receivers category. Keenan Allen scores 3 points. I'm not too concerned. I mean, it was his first week back, coming off the injury. I feel like he was put in there as more of a decoy. I don't think we can really judge Keenan Allen until he gets back fully. And fully, because he was he was a questionable going up to game time. So once we see a full week of practice, no injury designation, I'll make a decision on Keenan Allen.
He was on a snap count this week. And Brandon Staley came out and said that was pretty much why he didn't play in the second half, was because of that. I think he's going to be a full go against the Falcons this week, which with Mike Williams out, Keenan Allen's probably top 15, maybe top 10 wide receiver this week. We just saw what Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd did to this Falcons team.
Yeah,
so
that's the truth. And Mike Williams possibly out this week with an injury as well. So that only puts Keenan
listed as doubtful.
So that only puts up Keenan Allen's stock this week. Cortland Sutton is a guy that we mentioned earlier. 5 points for him. I know you're concerned, but he scored really well the previous week, and he had the Sauce Gardner matchup this week.
He did not score really well against the Chargers. He had 3.4 points.
Fucking hell.
Against the Chargers, and he had 5.3.
The week before that, what was it, 20-ish?
I mean, 12.4 against Indy.
Fuck? Bro, I swear.
16.2, 17.7, 19.7, and 11.2 is his season. So he hasn't scored over 20 at any point in this season. I think, this game, he's gone 3 for 23, 2 for 14, 5 for 74, and 5 for 52. I think that Sauce Gardner is fucking good. I think that's something that needs to be said. Is this guy is we keep talking about Pat Surtain as the guy that's emerging on the scene as this top cornerback or top tier cornerback. We got to start throwing Sauce Gardner into that conversation too. I mean, he's having an outstanding rookie year, and he absolutely shut down Cortland Sutton on the game-winning play in the end zone. He was able to deflect a pass away from Cortland Sutton in very good fashion. I mean, it was exactly how you teach your cornerbacks how to play the ball. I'm still worried about anybody in this Denver offense. It's not good. It just isn't. They've scored over 20 points once this season. Once again, had no touchdowns in this game. It's not a pretty sight. It's the last 3 games for the Broncos, they've gone 9, 16, and 9. You want to do that math? That's 1 touchdown in the last 3 weeks, and that went to Mr. Greg Dulcich. So I'm extremely worried if I'm a Cortland Sutton owner, and I'm not. I would take George Pickens over him. Might even take Tyler Boyd. It's a possibility, but Cortland Sutton's on the lower tier, wide receiver 2, maybe even wide receiver 3. Probably wide receiver 3, honestly, radar.
I would still put him into that wide receiver 2 category just because the preseason expectations for this Denver team. And, I mean, they're bound to get it together at some point, I think. I don't know. But Cortland Sutton, if you want to play the devil's advocate, if you want to feel good about him, he's probably, and it's not close, the most viable fantasy option in Denver. And it's not close. Like, I mean, he is the guy in Denver that you want to have. And you gotta feel kind of, and a Denver team with the preseason expectations that they had, if you were to tell me that Cortland Sutton is the most viable fantasy option on that team, I'd be like, okay, great, sounds good, sign me up.
Yeah, and that's the one good thing if you are a Cortland Sutton owner is Jerry Jeudy's done nothing. I mean, your biggest competition has not jumped on the scene and has been lighting it up by any means. So. Yeah, that's the one thing that does give me hope. I don't think Russell is good at all. And obviously, if you're going to depend on Brett Rypien, that's not a good thing that you want in fantasy.
For sure. All right, to round out this list of duds, Michael Pittman, 9 points this week. He's got a new QB headed in, and Sam Ellinger. I've heard it pronounced both ways all day today.
I say Ellinger.
I say Ellinger too. It seems like it rolls off the tongue a little more. But Michael Pittman going forward, probably a wide receiver 2. Ouch. That hurts.
I mean, I have always viewed him as a wide receiver 2. Maybe there was some wide receiver 1 upside, but I don't think he takes that much of a hit. I think that Ellinger might actually be a better fantasy option for Michael Pittman owners because I think what's a new quarterback going to do? He's going to go to his best target. He's
not going to throw 60 times a game like Matt Ryan's been doing.
No, he's not. But even if he throws 20, I could see half of those going to Michael Pittman. I would not be surprised because with a young quarterback, they're going to go to who their best target is.
Yeah, and that's kind of I don't know about that because I was making the argument before on Engage 8 because we were talking about Ellinger, and backup quarterbacks tend to throw to the guys that they've been throwing to in practice, like the guys that they've been getting reps with. Like that's the wide receiver 2s really seem to take a bump when the back, like Noah Brown, for example, like he was not even on the fucking radar in Dallas, and then Cooper Rush comes in, and now he was a wide receiver 2 there for a couple weeks. So I think that he's going to be spreading the ball more to guys that he's been seeing in practice, like an Alec Pierce, like a Paris Campbell, who have been having their breakouts as of late. So without throwing the ball 60 times in a game, and having a more Jonathan Taylor-based team and a more play-action team under Sam Ellinger, I see a lot of demotion from Michael Pittman and a promotion from the other guys.
As somebody that has nothing invested in Michael Pittman, I'll agree with that. That's totally fine.
Fair. Debo, he scores 9 points this week. Not much to talk about there. He's still Debo. You think he's going to take that much of a hit with CMC there?
It's tough. It's really tough to read because I do think that some of those running back carries are absolutely going to disappear. He might only get like 2 carries a game, maybe 3. I still think they're going to make it a point to get him the ball though because they know how explosive he is. But yeah, I mean, factoring McCaffrey in, you had a feeling it might take a hit. I just think this was a bad week in general. I think there's better weeks to come, especially for Debo owners. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that I would be too scared about. Wide receiver 1 conversation with Debo is another story, though. Like, I don't know if I look at him as that 100% wide receiver 1. I look at him more in the wide receiver 2 category now with McCaffrey showing up and Ayuk kind of jumping onto the scene and Kittle getting factored in. So there's a lot more targets to go around.
I think there's definitely a debate to be had there whether or not Debo's slipping towards that wide receiver 2 category. But if Debo Samuel's a wide receiver 2, you feel pretty fucking good about that. So to round out the list, Mark Andrews, we mentioned earlier, 0 points for this guy.
0.4. I think he had 4 rushing yards.
Okay, my correction.
He took a snap under center and rushed it up the gut for 4 yards, and that was it.
So he took 2 snaps under center yesterday, something we've never seen before.
He
But,
did, yep.
I mean, I don't know. He's still Mark Andrews. He's still top 2 tight end in the league. Do you think this is a kind of game that starts to put Kittle into that conversation over Andrews, though?
No, and the reason being is because, once again, I'll touch on it. Who else is Lamar Jackson going to throw to? He's the number 1 target, just like Kelsey's the number 1 target for Patrick Mahomes. And Kittle's got much more competition there in San Fran than Mark Andrews has in Baltimore. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Last guy on the duds list, and he's been making duds appearances since he came into the league, and that is Kyle Pitts, who scored 4 points after scoring his first touchdown on American soil last week. I mean, you're still starting him as a tight end. He's still a top 10 tight end, but he's not.
Is he?
He is. With the what he put up last year and the dart throws that you're making at the rest of the tight ends, you're still starting him on a weekly basis.
He's either getting double digits or 3 points. He's gone 3.9, 3.9, 3.9, 3.9, 3.9, 13.7, 3.5, 0, 10.9, 3.9.
I mean, where does that rank, though, as far as tight ends on the year?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because, like we said, it's such a position that it's just so hard to come by any points. But he on the season is wide receiver, tight end 21.
Oof, that stinks.
He's behind the likes of Noah Fant, Irv Smith, Daniel Bellinger, Jawan Johnson, Tyler Conklin, Mike Gesicki, Will Dissly, Evan Ingram,
Mike Gesicki, Evan Ingram, Robert Tonyan. That's the conversation that I start to like, hey, maybe I should start one of these guys over him, but all the other guys before that, Kyle Pitts is an easy starter over those. And Njoku, for example, like I'm in a 10-team league and I had Kyle Pitts. I traded for him, hoping that he'd bounce back. It hasn't really, but I picked up Njoku off the waiver wire. And Njoku.
Well, Njoku's out 2 to 5 weeks now, so you have to start Pitts.
Yeah, I know, but you can guys like an Njoku you can play in that category, like Evan Ingram and
Hayden
Hurst. Like I would start. That's Robert Tonyan. That's where I would start considering benching Kyle Pitts. But you're most likely those tight ends are most likely on other teams. So out of guys that you're going to pick up,
correct,
probably not starting them over Kyle Pitts. All right, man. Well, that does us for studs and duds for the week. And to bring us home, we're going to do some rest of season takeaways for you. More general takeaways, rest of season takeaways, whatever floats your boats. But Tyler, I'll hand it off to you, man, to start us off.
So my key takeaway is that I think Mike Vrabel is the best coach in the NFL. And I was talking a little bit with you guys this past week about how underrated I think Pete Carroll is, but nobody talks about Vrabel. This man is now, I think, like 9-0 against the spread and straight up combined in his career, coming off at least 10 days of rest. So a lot of times that might be a bye week. That might be a Thursday night game to a Sunday night game, whatever it might be. Continues to thrive in situations like that. This is the same team that got absolutely blown the fuck out at Buffalo on Monday Night Football in week 2. What have they done since then? They haven't lost. They've won 3 straight. They had a bye week in there as well. So now, as a 4-2 team leading the AFC South, they dominated this game against the Colts. The Colts were never really in this game at all. They dominated the Colts in Indy as well. I know the Colts tried to make a little bit of a late comeback. They were able to beat the Raiders as well. They were pretty much dominating that game. So what they've done since the loss to Buffalo is pretty remarkable, because you look at this lineup and they lost Treylon Burks and you still have Robert Woods there, but there's really nobody to throw to. So all you're depending on is mostly Derrick Henry and maybe a tight end here and there, and your defense. And if you look on paper, this defense is not great. It's not one of those top end defenses that you're looking at as the best defense in the league, or even a top 10 defense in the league. But somehow, some way, week in, week out, this team continues to get it done. And that is a big kudos to their coach. And we've seen what this guy's done. When Derrick Henry got hurt last year, what'd they do? They went on to still get the best record in the AFC. I know they lost in the first round to Cincinnati. What'd they do the year before? They went to the AFC Championship game. Or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, my bad, they went to the AFC Championship game. But nonetheless, what Mike Vrabel does with the little bit of talent, in my opinion, that he's got, like, what's Ryan Tannehill? We haven't even talked about him as a fantasy viable quarterback, which makes you think he's probably not even a top 20 quarterback in the league right now. But continues to get it done. There needs to be some kudos given to Mike Vrabel. At the beginning of the season, completely wrote this team off. I said this team was going to finish third in their division. This is going to be a complete rebuild. They're going to have to do something with Tannehill, probably throw Malik Willis in by week 14. No, this team's right in there. They're one game back of the best record in the AFC. I know it's the Bills right now, but Titans are right there. So I think there needs to be some humble pie eaten on my end for completely writing this team off. But this team's right back to where they were last year, the year before that, and it's all credit to Mike Vrabel, in my opinion.
You love to see that. There's not a lot of that being done on the Blitz pod, eating some humble pie, going back on a take, and reevaluating. I respect it, man. But yeah, I mean, Vrabel, got to give him his kudos. Coach of the year last year, and I was listening to Darius Butler talk earlier in the week on the Pat McAfee show, and he said that he runs the organization a lot like Belichick runs New England, and that's like a military system. You come in and it's like you're going into your job in the military every day. Like it's very disciplined, and I mean obviously that seems to translate to success, as guys like Belichick and guys like Vrabel can take a roster like the Patriots and the Titans have right now and still win football games. So it's awesome to watch, man. All right, well, I will dive into my key takeaway, and it's kind of a two-sided one. It's a Cooper Rush and Dak Prescott is more of a Brady Bledsoe situation than Zappe and Jones, possibly by week 13. And I say this because, for one, I think Mac Jones being looked at in the same light of Drew Bledsoe is hilarious. I think it's insulting, and I have no clue why it's happening. I want to shut that talk down. And I mean, it does look interesting now that Zappe stepped in last night, but it's so much different than the Brady Bledsoe situation. And I want to show you just how similar the Cooper Rush Prescott situation might be to Brady Bledsoe. But Bledsoe, let's dive into his career a little bit, because we were talking last week about Bledsoe's career. We didn't have exact stats on us, but in his 2 seasons before the injury, in 2001, when Tom Brady so famously came in and stole the jobs and rode off into the sunset. 1999, he puts up almost 4,000 yards, finished 6th in the league. 19 touchdowns, 10th in the league. Throws 21 picks, which was 3rd most, but those are really good stats for sure. In 2000, throws for almost 3,500 yards, finishes 13th, 17 touchdowns, which finishes 16th, and 13 INTs. And then he was injured in 2001. He was 29 years old when he was injured and benched, and he had been the starter in New England for 7 years prior. So you had a 7-year sample size to say, hey, things probably aren't working out with this Drew Bledsoe guy. Like, you had 7 years to really let it develop, really let it sit and make a decision. But Mac Jones, he played 1 year in his rookie year last year, man. And he puts up, honestly, similar stat line to what Bledsoe did before he got injured. Almost 4,000 yards, which finished 13th, 22 tuds, which is 14th, and 13 interceptions. He made the Pro Bowl, which Drew Bledsoe didn't. Only 8 rookie quarterbacks beside Mac have made the Pro Bowl since 2000. And if you take a look at that list, it's a pretty nice list. Vince Young, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck, RG3, Jameis Winston, and funny enough, Dak Prescott. And he also led a talent-barren Pats to the playoffs. And I mentioned this earlier, 98 rookie quarterbacks have started 10-plus games in a season. Only 12 of them, besides Mac Jones, have helped their team to the playoffs. Guys on that list: Dak, Big Ben, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Joe Flacco, RG3, Andrew Luck. Very nice company to be in. So Mac Jones really did everything that you could possibly want out of a first-round rookie quarterback last year. I want to give it 7 more years before we call it like a Drew Bledsoe situation where we're shipping him out and moving on to the next guy. I'm not that quick to write off Mac Jones for the rest of his career. He's going to be a starting quarterback somewhere, in my opinion.
It's just it's the Patriots. That's the main thing. That's the whole comparison with this. That's why it's been brought to light, is because you're having the presumed starter take.
Rightfully so, but so many comparisons are being drawn that it's getting ridiculous.
Yeah, the whole thing with Cooper Rush and Dak Prescott is, I still think, I don't know how old Dak is, but I would imagine he's probably in that same age as
29 years old,
Drew Bledsoe.
coming off an injury.
Cooper Rush is 28 years old though, so you can't compare that completely because it's not like he's a rookie quarterback that just started in the league and is now going to take over for a Pro Bowl quarterback. Also, people forget, Drew Bledsoe took the Patriots to the Super Bowl. Just want to throw that out there too. Dak Prescott has never taken the Cowboys to the Super Bowl. So those are a couple of my devil's advocate argument against your take there, as far as what I see as to why there's the comparisons with Brady and Bledsoe, with Mac Jones and Billy Zappi, and why I can't completely say that the Cooper Rush Dak Prescott situation is very similar to that situation, because the backup's just as experienced as the starter.
Yeah, okay, I can see your argument there for sure. But yeah, I just wanted to shut it down because, like, I mean, Drew Bledsoe was a veteran where they had taken them to the Super Bowl, but that Patriots team had high expectations every single year, and he took them to the playoffs only 3 years out of the 7 years. So, I mean, you expect more out of your quarterback. You saw 7 years of it. You didn't like it. Give Mac Jones another 7 years and then make a decision. But I don't really want to dive into Cooper Rush and Dak Prescott too much. But if you look up the Cowboys' upcoming schedule, man, Week 8 they play the Bears, who just dropped 33 on pass defense. Then they play the Packers, who are bound to be pissed. They play the Bills this weekend. If the Packers beat the Bills, they'll be looked at as a difficult team to run into in Week 10. Week 11, they play at the Vikings, a Tier 1 team of ours. Week 12, they play the Giants, a potential Tier 1 team of ours. And then they play the Colts. So if Dak doesn't perform well there, I mean, with McCarthy's situation, he's always had a short leash there. Rush has played better. He has a better PFF grade overall and passing grade than Dak Prescott in his game so far this year. They look like a better running team when Cooper Rush is in the game. And that's something we can never comfortably say about the Dallas Cowboys. But now Tony Pollard looks good. Zeke looks good. And Rush probably runs the play action better than Dak Prescott does at times. And there's less weapons in Dallas this year. Gallup had 0 catches in his return. So I could see where it would make sense that you might decide to go with a Rush over Prescott if you're feeling that urgency on Mike McCarthy's side. But I know the argument against it. But I think it's closer than a Zappi Jones situation.
Ooh, I don't agree with that. I think the Zappi Jones situation is absolutely.
Well, Zappi's going to start
because
now.
of who your coach
Zappi's
is.
going to start now. That's.
I think Mac Jones is going to start. Little friendly wager again? What do you want to do this time?
I know, because I would feel pretty good about Mac Jones starting too. But yeah, I was just like, that was the big. I've been hearing that for the past like 3 weeks with Zappi Hour. Like, we've been talking Baylor and Zappi up a lot, but I just wanted to pipe it down a little bit. Like, this is not the same thing. So, all right, man. Well, that just about does us for our key takeaways in Studs and Duds episode. We'll have this out on Wednesday morning. And then we'll have our Power Rankings episode out on Thursday morning. And then we'll have our last episode out on Friday and Saturday. So, catch you guys later. Peace.